if there's anything that separates somebody from catching more fish than the other person, technique-wise, I think jigging a minnow, vertical jigging is a much different animal because it's a lot easier to keep that line tight when you're just right here. There's a little more finesse and technique involved in pitching it versus straight up and down. If the bite's really hot, it doesn't really matter what you do. You seem to have to really work these fish yet. What is up, fisher people? Randy's back, Brandon's not, but after we filmed that last video, doing a bunch of jig and minnow stuff, my brother brought up some interesting questions and clarification points. We're going to talk a little bit, well, maybe more than a little bit, about jigging technique. Talk about jig pitching. There's a lot that goes into that. Jigging wraps, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. If you're casting crankbait, yeah, I mean, everything's got some nuance to it, but boy, if there's anything that separates somebody from catching more fish than the other person, technique-wise, I think jigging a minnow just is very specific. And a lot of what his questions were had to come down to, like, keeping the line tight, that whole thing that we all say, so you can feel the bite. And basically, I'm gonna throw a cast back here. And what he had taken away from that, he needed to like follow the line everywhere. So if I can back up a little bit, maybe I can describe this, but once this jig hits the bottom, it'll go slack, the line will go limp, then you know it's on bottom. What he was doing was like, he would do this pull back, and then he would like follow it down while he's reeling and try to make sure that the line is always 100% tight. My perception of keeping the line tight is basically you make your stroke and you keep the rod up as it's falling. You're gonna always have a little bit of bow because of gravity, because of what the water's doing to your line, because of what the wind's doing. You can eliminate wind a little bit by pitching straight downwind, but you want to keep it mostly tight. But you still want to make a stroke, whether it's a real finesse-y pull like that, or it's a little bit of a hit like that. The point being, since the jig is below you, whatever you do, if you pull it at all, it's going to lift off the bottom and then slowly fall back towards you. And if you jig it like this and drop it back, you'll miss the bite. But if you jig it and hold here, it'll fall towards you on a somewhat tight line. And the tighter the line is, the more you'll feel the vibration of the hit. If you got a lot of bow in heavy wind and they don't bite it hard, you might feel a faint, what was that? That was a little fish. You might feel a faint tick. If you got a good tight line and a good fish hits it hard, you'll feel more of a thump. Then there's also the times where they're really negative and you get the mush bites where they just pick it up off the bottom and you don't necessarily feel it, and then you just go to lift and it's heavy, and then you got to suss out whether or not, is he on there, is he not, is the rod tip moving, I can't, and then you make a decision. But keep the rod or the line mostly tight so that you can feel most of the vibration, but still make what one of my cousins would call an athletic move. Don't get too robotic with it. Don't feel like you have to follow everything and watch the line to make sure you have 100% connection the whole time. That's why we're using braid doing this. If you're using mono, it's even tougher, and mono is really hard to feel those tick bites and thump bites. It's more of a, eventually it's going to get heavy and you're going to hope that they're chewing on it, and mono's different. Braid was like a game changer for jig pitching. And then you're also doing a lot of line watching with the high vis braid stuff, because sometimes you will just see the line jump, or you'll see it start to move this way, and that can be an indicator even if you didn't feel it. That was a lot to swallow. That was a mouthful. Let's just catch some fish first. And then as stuff happens, we'll talk a little bit more about how you can master your jigging technique. And we'll see if we can do some vertical. I don't know if it's, some days we've had vertical luck, some days we've had pitching luck, some days we've had a little bit of both. Vertical jigging is a much different animal because it's a lot easier to keep that line tight when you're just right here, right? There's a little more finesse and technique involved in pitching it versus straight up and down. But you got to try a little bit of both, and you got to vary your presentations. Like you can try some pops like that. You can try the more finessey, just pull it off the bottom. And sometimes I'll just do this little inching across the bottom thing if they're super sluggish, and try to keep it from lifting off too much at all. I don't know what the answer is going to be yet today. but I'm sure it's going to be different than yesterday because we haven't really set into a full fall mode yet.
You doing braid, straight braid to jig, or you got floral?
No, I got a fluorocarbon leader on there, which in the spring I like the mono leaders because they float more and they're softer. And then in the fall, when you're fishing deeper water, I like the fluorocarbon. A little tougher, sinks more. Uni knot, double uni knot, uni to uni for the joining knot to splice the lines together. And then I do a uni knot tying the jig on, but I've learned if you have like light mono in the spring and you do a uni knot, say you got 6 pound, 8 pound mono and you do a uni knot, a lot of times it'll break when you set the hook. So you might want to use a different knot for tying jigs with lighter mono. You can use the old school, plain old fisherman's knot for tying those jigs. I went to cast a jigging wrap and my dead stick ended up getting one. Look at that. We'll see if I can hand line them. If I miss them, I miss them. Maybe we need some slip bobbers today.
It's a nice one.
I think I might keep some fish. I'm supposed to have a fish fry here in a couple days.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that one.
Perfect eater.
Perfect 18 inch, 17 and a half, something like that. Well, no jig technique required for that one. That was a dead stick, folks. So sometimes the best technique is no technique. Write that down. So when it comes to vertical jigging, similar kind of concept, but a lot of times what I like to do, especially in like this deep-ish 20-some, 30-some feet of water, like just kind of hit the slack a little bit and then follow it down a little bit. Let it sit on the bottom for a split second, hit the slack. But again, you don't want to just do this. If you do that and drop it right, you're never going to feel anything. You might come up and go, oh, there's a fish, but this is a good time to make some contact with it and follow it down. And you could do it slower instead of so much of a hit. You can let it sit on the bottom a little more and kind of twitch it. There's a lot of variations, but again, you're not going to feel the bite if you do that. In vertical jigging, you still oftentimes will feel that thump as it's dropping. And then other times you'll just go to lift and you go, ooh, that feels a little heavier. And then he kind of wiggles and then you set the hook. So it can be a definite cadence to that. And some people like to just kind of twitch it off the bottom a little bit. Maybe pull it up and let it fall, not to bottom, but to catch it, so to speak, like 4 inches off the bottom. That can work at times. But you got to play with it a little bit if they're not just popping it right away. Randy's got one. I like that. Randy with the vertical jig. Do what he's doing.
That's
Lifter. That's Sauger?
Sauger.
Yeah. Saugers are making such a comeback on Sakakawea this year. We might have a good sauger bite again. You got any bait in his mouth?
No.
Wouldn't surprise me if some of the bites we missed were little saugers. I got a fish in my area here. Hanging around for a while here at 10:13. Seems interested. It's not a very strong mark though. It's very thin. There's not a lot of red in there, almost no red. Probably about a 10, 12 inch fish. When you're sitting still, like a long mark doesn't mean anything. That just means they're under the cone longer. What you're looking for is the thickness and the darkness of the return for a bigger fish. If your palate's like mine and then red, the more red, the bigger the mark. And that can matter how much you get your sensitivity turned up and all that. I got like my sensitivity at 12 or something right now. So a big bright red mark is going to be a good fish. If you turn the sensitivity up to like 20 all the way up, they all kind of look big. They all look bright red, but I'm going to try jogging one notch again too. Last time we jogged, I got a bite. Sometimes that's all it takes too. Like when you're vertical jigging, you jog and it just pulls sideways for a second. I've had some days where it seems like every time you jog, it triggers a bite. If the bite's really hot, it doesn't really matter what you do. You get your minnow down there, you jig it a little bit, and they just take it. But we seem to have to really work these fish yet. I'd say the one thing I see that drives me the most nuts though is like the rod tip is what moves the lure. So people think they don't move it very far, but then they do this. They just move that bait like 8 foot. Way unnecessary. And they'll do the same thing when they're vertical jigging. They'll like get way up here and wait. Like that is not. Think about how far the rod tip's moving And you only need to move the bait a few inches or a foot at a time. There's a fish over there on the dead stick. Again, dead stick. Don't need to move the bait that far. Decent fish.
Yeah. Well, it's...
Nice walleye.
Thanks.
Yeah. So in that case, we got like 6-inch waves that moved the bait 6 inches, and it was just right for that walleye. We've caught more on dead sticks than anything else so far. That could tell you something about the fish's behavior. Very pale fish.
Yeah, it is. I was gonna say it's either a sauger or something was different about it.
Looks like a little bit of a mix, yeah. I don't see as much of a white tip tail, if any, there.
My jig came off.
Oh, that's a bummer. It was such a faint little bite. I was going to try to do the slack trick. Feed it to him and see if he'd finish it, but he didn't. Not a good popper. He's still there, though. You can see him just outside the boat on side imaging. Just outside there. Another thing you should think about, too, in your jig stroke is the fact that the deeper the water, the more water pressure you got. So you got all that weight of the water dulling whatever's happening. Things don't jump as much and they fall slower. Everything's a little slower down there, whereas if you're in shallower water, things jump quickly and fall quickly. So that's why you use, for the most part, lighter jigs and lighter tackle up in shallow water, because you don't want that thing going bing bing all the time on the bottom. Whereas in this deep water, if I'm just doing this little pop, that minnow's going poof and just falling like a feather down there. But if you made that same motion in shallow water, it'd go bing bing, not as much hang time. So you got to do more in deeper water. Same that would hold for like a jigging rap. Like if you're fishing a jigging rap in 6 feet of water, you don't need a lot of big pops. You can just kind of snap it a little bit. Whereas in the deeper water, you got to give it a really big crack just to get it to move the same amount. So you have to adjust based on the water depth because of water pressure. So I'm just doing these little slack line hits, and yeah, I say to keep the line tight. Keep it tight until it falls, and then I kind of drop it down and pop it on the way up just to get some lift on it. So hit it, follow it down. If you don't have a bite, drop it and hit the slack a little bit just to get a little jump. But it's not moving that much down there because of how much water pressure there is. But you don't need to go here either, because then you got a direct connection to your line. If you do this, it's moving that far for sure. Whereas I'm not moving the rod tip much here. It's all about how much force I hit that slack with and how much it's gonna move. But it's always gonna move less the deeper you are. Shallower water, tone it down. Deeper water, whatever you're trying to do, you might have to give it a little more than you think, but you don't need to do this. Not saying you'll never get bit doing that, but most fish aren't looking for a minnow to go 6 feet up in the air and fall back down. That's not the way a minnow normally behaves. First cast at a new spot. Is that a bass? It's acting like a Walter now, but it is not. I think it's a smallmouth.
Yeah. Smallie. No, it's staying down.
I don't think it's a bass.
Maybe it's side hooked. It's side hooked something. Oh, that's big.
That's definitely not a smallmouth bass.
It's a side hook something or other.
I think. Big
Pike.
pike. He's not an easy fish to land.
It felt like a smallie with all the head shakes and stuff.
Solid fish. Pretty good pocket of them here anyway. Are they hungry?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of fish here. Got 2 of them moving under the boat. 1 high jig to get their attention and make sure they see it. Then work it down.
Saw him right underneath the boat.
What kind of lure you got on there? Like a Tika minnow?
take a minnow around. I think I'm caught in that line there. So.
Okay. Oh, big walleye. Nice.
There we go.
Nice fish.
It's pretty nice.
I think it's a catfish. Oh no, it's a big walleye.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Boy, the dead stick today. That is something. And then Randy gets a good one on a jigging wrap, so figure that out. I don't know, but he must have put some ferocious head shakes on that to make him feel like a catfish rubbing. We may have finally hit our bite window. That would be awesome blossom. Bend your tail a little bit. Go straight. He just like to keep that tail curled. That's funny. Curl the tail then, if that's what you want to do.
Sure.
You know, it just makes sense that the day I decided I'm going to make a video about jigging technique, we catch them all on dead sticks. That's pretty appropriate.
Yeah, it's just their way of saying they're in charge.
Not on a dead stick, it was actually vertically fishing this time. That's nice. Oh, nice walleye, Randy. Got him.
It is a nice one. Wow.
That kind of surprised me. Kind of a skinny one. Long skinny thing. It's probably a 20-incher, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Why so skinny, buddy? It's almost 22.
22.
Holy cow.
Nice fish.
21 3/4, just rail thin.
Oh.
He popped it good though. I'll tell you what.
That takes some skill right there.
Another dead stick fish though. It was bigger than I thought it was gonna be. Boat flipping a 20-incher on the dead stick, maybe 19, I don't know. Maybe we found the bite window. You just gotta wait until almost 3:30 today.
You hang on to it.
Mm-hmm. Randy's fish, not my fish. Randy's fish. Caught 3 here in the morning, left, came back. Now we got 3 already. I want to get one pitching a jig finally. We did so much talking about that. It's either been vertical or dead sticking. Jig, bottom. Jig, bottom. You marking anything?
Not really behind us.
They are behind us? Not behind us.
No.
I shouldn't cast over there then.
There's one 20 feet back that way.
I'm not good enough to catch one. I need 7. I got a pancakey one underneath me.
I see
332.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There's a pancakey mark.
4 or 5 of them over that way, about anywhere between 30 feet and 70 feet. At least I'm seeing my bait. I just saw my 8-ounce jig hit the bottom. And now I'm gonna slow walk it back over top of 3 fish I just marked.
Yeah, if you got a Mega Live, or if you have heard about and thought about Mega Live, the jig tracking was not super good unless you had a really heavy lure, and they just did an update last week, and apparently it's much easier to track your jig with the update.
I never would have done a 1/8-ounce jig tracking,
Right.
no matter what distance, and I'm still set.
That's
I'm
huge.
at the furthest to 65 feet, so
That's huge. That's a big deal, y'all. And the
Yeah,
fish. Go
I haven't
quiet.
felt the dead like in. Oh, there we go. That's a beauty, Clark.
That was a good thump. That's a nice fish too. If it's a walleye, it's nice. Oh yeah, nice wally. Nice wally.
Whoops.
You're good. Quality today, Randy.
Yeah, they are.
Quality fishes. Got a good thumper on camera. He's a fatty too. That other couple of fish were getting skinny, but this guy's got. He's shorter, but much thicker.
That's nice.
Look at the shoulders on that guy. He's got shoulder pads on.
Don't touch your net for a second.
Yeah. Jig extraction in process. Got him. So that fish bit your dead stick and got off and then hit that one too. White bass. That seems like a white bass move. Need another thumper. It's addicting. Another good thing for people that can't get into the groove of doing this, get your hand off. Just use the one hand. Then it falls, you can reel down. If you got that other hand on that other reel, sometimes that makes people tend to do funny things. If you struggle with that, one hand, just like if you're practicing free throws, right? They always tell you just one hand. You only need one hand to make a jigging stroke. You only need the other to reel. Bump. Bump. You see how long it takes to hit the bottom too? In 30 feet of water. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Grab it on the way down.
Yeah.
Vertical. Down. Dead stick. Got it?
Off.
Off?
Oh. No, no, it's there.
It's there?
It's there.
Let me grab your other rod.
That's okay, we'll just leave it there. I guess it was just running at me pretty good there.
Nice walleye.
Oh yeah.
Might be the biggest of the day.
Wow.
God, the dead stick thing today is just, I've never caught so many walleyes on dead sticks. Definitely not on this lake. Which tells you that like a slip bobber could be a good idea.
And he's an angry one.
You better measure that. That might be bigger than my 22.5-er.
Nope, it's 21.25.
Really? Nice fish. He does look smaller than I thought he did when he's in the net. Super good quality today.
Yeah, we have structure, we have bait fish, and we have actual fish.
Trifecta. And one of them bit.
And one of them bit.
Decent?
It's not a boat flipper, so I'll just grab it with this net here. It's going.
Getting the mega live.
I don't want it in the trolling motor more than anything.
Either or. They're both bad ideas. Oh, carp? Oh, I thought that was a giant walleye.
That would have been nice.
Oh, I was like, oh my lord, that's a pig. That's a friggin' carp.
That sucks.
Dang it.
Sucker.
I just about pooped my pants there when I saw that. Imagine that as a walleye.
Yeah.
That would be a tank. That's a huge carp. That might be 30.
Carpe diem.
Bye-bye. Well, if you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed, think about doing that. Light official people. Bye-bye. Bend your tail a little bit. Go straight. You just like to keep that tail curled.